In Maplewood, California, two worlds stood side by side, unknowingly on a collision course. On one side, the Iron Will Martial Arts Club echoed with modern ambition. On the other, a serene garden offered an ancient wisdom. What happens when brute force challenges quiet mastery? This is a story about respect, unexpected power, and finding strength where you least expect it. At the heart of Maplewood sat the Iron Will Martial Arts Club. Its gleaming windows reflected the fierce dedication within.
Showcasing the rapid movements.
Of students under Leo Vance, Leo, in his early 30s, was undeniably talented, quick, powerful, and brimming with arrogance. He championed 21st century martial arts fast, aggressive, and relentlessly modern. He'd often scoff at anything he deemed outdated, particularly when students struggled. "What is that old man's Tai Chi?" he'd bellow, his dismissive words often drifting into the quiet garden next door. That garden, a modest patch of paving stones and roses, was home to a different discipline. Every afternoon, a small group of elderly women gathered there. Among them was Florence Miller, with silver hair neatly tied back, whose movements were precise, fluid, and profoundly calm. Beside her were her dear friends, Betty, thin and quick as a hummingbird, and Carol, with a sturdy frame radiating quiet strength. Their movements were slow, deliberate, almost meditative, a series of gentle blocks, flowing stances, and controlled breathing. They seemed oblivious to the thunderous thuds and sharp reprimands from the dojo, engrossed in their timeless practice. Yet, Leo's disdain wasn't always just noise. It often found a target in Lily, a bright-eyed 14-year-old. In Leo's class, who struggled with his aggressive, strength-focused methods, she wasn't built for brute force, but for grace and precision. Leo, frustrated by her perceived slowness, would publicly shame her. "Lily, you're too soft. You need to hit harder, move faster. Don't tell me you want to end up like those old ladies doing dances next door." Lily would stand there, tears welling, feeling small and inadequate. But as Leo's words pierced her confidence, her gaze would drift. She'd watch Florence and her friends, mesmerized by their effortless control. Their serene faces and the quiet power in their unhurried movements. It was a stark contrast to the relentless pressure she faced, and in those moments a tiny seed of hope began to sprout. The dojo's modern fervor and the garden's ancient calm stood side by side, unaware their paths were about to intertwine. Lily's struggle at Iron Will wasn't just about technique, it was a battle for her spirit. Leo Vance, with his aggressive, strength-focused methods, simply couldn't see past her perceived slowness. "You're too gentle. This isn't a tea ceremony. This is combat," he'd boom, his words chipping away at her confidence. Each missed block and hesitant kick felt like a public failure, solidifying Leo's belief that she wasn't cut out for modern martial arts, while other, more outwardly aggressive students thrived under his tutelage. Lily found herself increasingly isolated, longing for a different kind of strength, one rooted in harmony, not brute force. The thought of facing a star pupil like Mark filled her with dread. As Leo's harsh reprimands became unbearable, Lily's gaze often drifted to the quiet garden next door. There she'd watch Florence Miller and her friends, Betty and Carol, moving with an effortless grace. Their slow, deliberate movements, serene faces, and quiet power offered a stark contrast to the relentless pressure she faced. It was a world where strength seemed to emanate from stillness and control, a stark opposite to the dojo's modern fervor. A quiet desperation built inside Lily. She knew she couldn't continue feeling defeated every day. The pull of that serene garden whispering promises of a different path grew stronger. One afternoon, after a particularly sharp reprimand from Leo, Lily made a decision. It was a small step that felt like a vast leap of faith. Instead of heading home, she walked purposefully towards the garden fence. Florence, Betty, and Carol were just finishing their practice. Florence offered a gentle, knowing smile. "Hello, dear," she said softly. Lily, mustering courage, whispered, "Grandma, can I practice with you? I watch you, and I think your way is beautiful." Florence's smile widened. "Of course, dear. There's no fee, no schedule, just the joy of movement. You're welcome anytime. A new, quiet chapter began for Lily. She started attending the garden sessions whenever possible. The contrast was stark. No booming commands, no aggressive pushes. Florence, Betty, and Carol didn't teach in the traditional sense. They simply were. Lily absorbed their lessons through quiet observation, imitation, and subtle adjustments. Florence would guide her posture with a gentle touch. Betty would demonstrate a swift, imperceptible weight shift, and Carol would show her how to root herself, connecting mind and body. Slowly, Lily transformed. Her hesitant movements became fluid, her balance solid. She discovered a newfound strength in controlling her body, in understanding her own center. Her eyes, once downcast, now held a sparkle of quiet confidence. This quiet transformation wasn't destined to remain unnoticed. One sunny afternoon, as Leo Vance concluded his class, his gaze happened to fall on the garden. His jaw tightened. He saw Lily, not in her uniform, but moving with the elderly women, executing complex sequences with an elegance he'd never seen from her. His star student Mark stood equally perplexed beside him, Leo's face flushed with anger. "What in the world is going on here?" he muttered, a storm brewing in his eyes. The sight of Lily abandoning his rigorous training for what he perceived as ancient, useless dances was an intolerable insult. He felt a visceral threat to his authority and reputation. In that moment, the calm facade of the garden was about to be shattered by an unexpected confrontation. Leo Vance's simmering anger finally erupted. He strode swiftly from his dojo, crossing the narrow strip of grass that separated their worlds, his face a thundercloud of fury. "Lily, what in the world are you doing here?" Leo roared, his voice slicing through the garden's tranquility, making Lily flinch. He glared at Florence, Betty, and Carol, who remained composed in their stances. "And you? What are you teaching my student? This isn't martial arts. This is some ancient ritual, a dance. You're filling her head with nonsense, making her soft." Florence calmly turned, her serene eyes meeting Leo's furious gaze. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice soft but clear, carrying an authority that seemed to deflate some of his bluster. "Simply practice to stay healthy and share the joy of movement. We don't teach anyone. This child came to us because she needed a different kind of balance. If you believe our way is useless, we can perform an experiment. 3 months from now, right here in this garden, Lily will face any student her age you are most proud of. And if Lily wins, you must publicly apologize for your words of contempt towards elders and different methods. Mr. Vance, do you dare accept?" Leo Vance, confident in his methods and his star student's abilities, scoffed and agreed immediately. 3 months of intense preparation passed. Leo relentlessly pushed Mark, driving his student to new extremes. For the honor of iron will. Thunder, seeing the upcoming demonstration as his sole chance to restore his standing. He couldn't fathom how old women doing dances could prepare anyone for a real match. Meanwhile, in the quiet garden, Lily continued refining her internal strength, balance, and fluid movements with Florence, Betty, and Carol. She learned to anticipate, yield, and redirect an opponent's momentum. Her fear gradually gave way to quiet determination. The day of the demonstration arrived, bringing with it a palpable tension that hung in the humid California air. Word had spread like wildfire through Maplewood. This wasn't merely an exhibition, but a true clash of philosophies, old versus new, raw power versus silent wisdom. Parents, students from both camps, and curious onlookers from the community gathered at the modest garden, spilling onto the surrounding paths. Their eyes darted anxiously between Leo's imposing figure and the calm presence of Florence's group. Leo Vance arrived with Mark, his star student, whose confidence was tinged with nervous energy. Leo's posture was rigid, his jaw set, his gaze dismissive of the makeshift ring. He gave Mark a final stern pep talk, emphasizing overwhelming force, speed, and efficiency across the small divide. Lily stood simply beside Florence, Betty, and Carol. She wore comfortable athletic wear, not a crisp uniform like Mark's, with no outward display of nerves, just a quiet focus in her eyes. The elderly women, in their usual practice clothes, appeared calm and composed, like ancient trees unswayed by the brewing storm. Florence placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder, a silent gesture of encouragement that spoke volumes. Lily took a deep, steadying breath, a technique she'd learned from Carol, felt a surge of inner peace. The crowd hushed as Leo stepped forward, his voice booming with practiced authority. Welcome, everyone. Today we're not just witnessing a demonstration, we're seeing the future of martial arts in action. Mark here represents the pinnacle of modern training: speed, power, efficiency. Let's see how that stacks up against other methods. His pointed gaze toward the elderly women left no doubt about his meaning. Then it was time. Lily and Mark stepped into the taped-off square. Mark coiled with the energy of a spring, his muscles visibly tensing. Lily, by contrast, seemed to glide, her movements economical and fluid. The air crackled with anticipation. The first bell chimed, and the match began. Not just a contest of skill, but a silent argument between two distinct philosophies finally brought to the mat. The bell chimed again, a sharp, clear sound that cut through the anticipation, signaling the start of the match. Mark, true to Leo's training, exploded into action. He was a whirlwind of controlled aggression, launching a barrage of powerful kicks and quick punches, aiming to overwhelm Lily from the outset. Every strike was infused with the raw strength and speed that Leo so heavily emphasized. He moved with the confidence of a predator, circling Lily, looking for an opening to land a decisive blow. The crowd leaned forward, murmuring in expectation, accustomed to the dominant style of iron will, but Lily didn't falter. To the surprise of many, she didn't meet force with force. Instead, she became a ripple. With an almost ethereal grace, she weaved and swayed, her body responding to Mark's onslaught not with resistance, but with subtle evasion. Each time Mark lunged, she would shift her weight just so, pivot her foot barely an inch, or subtly adjust. Her posture, causing his powerful blows to miss by mere millimeters, or glance harmlessly off her body. It was like watching water deflect stone. There was no wasted movement, no panic, just a calm, effortless redirection of energy. Leo Vance, standing on the sidelines, watched with a growing frown. He expected Lily to be overwhelmed, to crumble under Mark's relentless assault, but she wasn't. She was dancing. He saw her use small, almost imperceptible shifts in her hips and shoulders. Techniques he hadn't taught, to throw Mark's balance off just enough that his follow-up attacks became awkward. He saw her breathe deeply, almost silently, maintaining a serene composure even as Mark roared with effort. This wasn't the kind of fighting he understood. It was evasive. As the minutes ticked by, Mark's powerful attacks began to lose their edge. He was exerting immense energy while Lily seemed to float, conserving every ounce of hers. Frustration began to creep into his movements, making them less precise, more desperate. He became predictable. Lily, with her newfound sensitivity, read his intentions before he even fully committed. She anticipated his every move, not through speed, but through a deep understanding of body mechanics and the rhythm of combat that the older women had subtly instilled. Finally, Mark launched a powerful spinning kick, a signature move taught by Leo. It was fast, intended to knock Lily off her feet. But as his foot came sweeping towards her, Lily didn't block. Instead, with a fluid, almost beautiful movement, she subtly stepped into the kick, redirecting its momentum with a gentle shift of her hip and a slight push. Mark, caught off balance by his own force, spun uncontrollably and stumbled outside the marked ring. The crowd gasped. Silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by Mark's heavy breathing. He stood outside the ring, bewildered, while Lily remained perfectly still within it, her chest rising and falling evenly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile gracing her lips. Leo Vance stared, his face paling. He rushed to Mark's side, his voice booming with disbelief. What happened? You just stumbled. It was a fluke. You just got lucky. He wasn't even fighting properly. His words, laced with desperate justification, hung in the air, a stark contrast to the quiet, undeniable victory that had just unfolded. His voice, usually so commanding, now had a shrill edge of desperation. He turned to the bewildered crowd, trying to regain control. This isn't real martial arts. This is ... some kind of trickery. Evasion isn't winning. It's just avoiding a real fight. His eyes, wild with anger, swept across the garden, finally landing on Florence, Betty, and Carol, who stood calmly, their expressions unreadable. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with unspoken judgment. Then Betty, the slender woman with sharp eyes, stepped slightly forward. A faint, almost mischievous smile touched her lips. Her voice, though soft, carried clearly across the quiet garden. "Perhaps, Mr. Vance," she began, her tone gentle yet piercing, "you simply haven't seen real martial arts in a very long time. Or perhaps what you call trickery, we call efficiency. There are ways to achieve victory without brute force, you know, ways that don't involve exhausting yourself." She paused, her gaze steady on Leo. "Honestly, with all your modern power, I doubt you could even lay a hand on any of us, let alone defeat us." The words hung in the air, a quiet challenge that struck Leo right to his core. His face, already flushed with anger, darkened to a furious red. Betty's soft voice, her unassuming appearance, made the taunt all the more. Cutting it wasn't just a challenge. It was a personal insult to his expertise, his strength, his entire philosophy. To be dismissed by an elderly woman, one he'd so openly scorned, was intolerable. His ego, already bruised by Lily's unexpected victory, now shattered into 1,000 pieces. "How dare you?" Leo roared, his voice echoing across the garden, startling a few birds from the trees. He abandoned all pretense of professionalism. "You think you can just stand there and mock me? You think a few dances give you the right to judge my skill?" His eyes narrowed to slits, blazing with a dangerous fury. "Fine. You want to see what real fighting is? You want to see if I can lay a hand on you? Then step onto this mat. Any of you. Right now. Let's see what your efficiency does against a true martial artist." His chest heaved with rage, his fists clenched at his sides. He was beyond reason, consumed by the need to reassert his dominance. To prove them all wrong, Florence stepped forward, her calm presence a stark contrast to Leo's explosive anger. Her eyes, deep and unwavering, met his. "All right, Mr. Vance," she said, her voice steady and clear, carrying an authority that transcended mere volume. "I will accept your challenge. But understand this, if you lose, not only will you publicly apologize for every dismissive word you've uttered about age, it's about method, about dignity, but you will also commit to listening with an open mind. You will truly learn to respect the wisdom that comes from years, from patience, and from understanding that strength isn't just about what you can break, but what you can build." Leo, blinded by his fury, simply nodded, a sneer on his lips, convinced he was about to put these old women in their place once and for all. He had no idea the lesson that awaited him. Leo Vance stepped onto the makeshift mat, his face a mask of determined fury. He saw only a frail old woman, and his mind was already picturing the swift, decisive blow that would put her and her archaic notions in their place.
No?
The crowd, a mix of apprehension and eager anticipation, watched in hushed silence. This wasn't just a demonstration anymore. It was a showdown. Leo exploded forward, a coiled spring of muscle and speed. He unleashed a furious barrage of punches and kicks, aiming for a quick knockout. He was a blur of motion, every strike packed with the power of his youth and training. But Florence was, else she didn't block, didn't evade with large, frantic movements. Instead, she seemed to flow around his attacks, her body shifting, swaying, almost dancing out of harm's way with imperceptible adjustments. It was like trying to hit smoke. Leo's powerful blows whistled through the air, missing by inches, leaving him off balance and increasingly frustrated. Then, as he committed to a powerful cross, Florence made a subtle, almost invisible movement. With her hand, a feather-light touch to his elbow that seemed to redirect his entire momentum. Leo stumbled, his own force turning against him, and he found himself staggering. Then collapsing onto the ground, a heap of bewildered muscle. The crowd gasped. Leo lay there for a stunned moment, then scrambled to his feet, his face pale with disbelief and a flicker of something akin to fear. Still reeling, Leo's pride refused to yield. He glared at Florence, then at Betty, the slender woman who had dared to taunt him. Again, he snarled, convinced the first fall was a fluke. He lunged at Betty, attempting to corner her, to pin her with sheer speed. But Betty was a flash. She was quicker than he imagined, not with brute force, but with a startling agility. A phantom he weaved in and out of his reach, a phantom he couldn't quite grasp. Every time he extended, she'd be gone, only to reappear at his flank. Then, with a lightning-quick flick of her foot, so subtle it was almost missed, she tapped his lead leg, throwing off his balance. Leo stumbled, fought for equilibrium, but the momentum was against him. He pitched forward, landing face down on the mat with a grunt. The silence was even heavier this time. Leo pushed himself up, breathing hard, a new emotion clouding his fury, genuine bewilderment. His body aching, his mind reeling, Leo still refused to give in. He looked at Carol, the rounder woman, convinced she would be the easiest. He lumbered towards her, trying to use his weight to simply push her over, but Carol was a rock. She stood her ground, her stance impossibly solid. Leo pushed, he shoved, he even tried to sweep her leg, but she wouldn't budge. It was like hitting an immovable tree. Then, with a gentle but firm push from her hip, utilizing her incredible rootedness, Carol effortlessly diverted Leo's force. He recoiled, stumbled backward, and finally, with a loud thud, fell hard onto the ground on his back, winded and utterly defeated. He lay there, staring up at the sky, his chest heaving, not just from exertion, but from the profound psychological shock of being utterly dominated by three women he had so arrogantly dismissed. His world, built on speed and power, had just crumbled. Leo lay on the ground, winded. It's not just from the physical exertion, but from the utter collapse of his entire worldview. It's the perfect, invincible image he had built of himself and of his modern martial arts lay shattered. The silence in the garden was profound, heavy with the weight of his defeat. He expected ridicule, gloating, or perhaps a lecture. Instead, a gentle hand extended towards him. It was Florence. She helped him sit up, her touch surprisingly firm yet kind. "Leo," she began, her voice soft but clear, carrying to every corner of the hushed gathering. "You're not weak. You are strong. Very strong and very fast. But you lost, not because you lacked power, but because you were too presumptuous. You didn't prepare for what you scorned. You focused so much on winning that you forgot to truly understand." It then gestured for Leo and the wide-eyed students to sit down around them. The once intimidating sensei now sat humbly, his gaze fixed on Florence, absorbing every word. "We are not just old women doing dances," Florence continued, a faint smile touching her lips. "We are simply people who have dedicated our lives to the martial arts." Betty, the nimble one, spoke next, her voice steady. "My name is Elizabeth Betty Peterson. In 1968, I was the national karate champion." A murmur went through the crowd. Then Carol, the steadfast one, added, "And I am Caroline Carol Evans. I represented our country in Taekwondo at the 1972 Olympics." Finally, Florence spoke again, her voice resonating with years of wisdom. "And I am Florence Flo Miller. From 1975 to 1979, I was the world champion in both karate and Taekwondo, across multiple weight classes." Leo's jaw dropped. The students gasped. The revelation hung in the air, a testament to a hidden legacy. "You see, Leo," Florence continued, her gaze gentle but unwavering, "we are old now. In a true competition, we could not match your strength or your speed. We might touch you, but we couldn't fell you completely like we once could. What you lacked today was not raw power, but understanding. The true essence of martial arts isn't just about striking, it's about respect for your opponent, patience in your growth, the ability to adapt, and above all, the humility to learn from every source. No matter how old or unconventional it may seem, Lily, tears in her eyes, rushed to hug Florence. A silent thank you for revealing a truth that changed everything. The revelations hung in the air, a profound truth settling over the garden. Leo Vance, stripped of his pride and arrogance, sat, quietly, his head bowed, absorbing the weight of the moment. The martial arts world he thought he knew so well had just expanded, deepened, and revealed a humility he had never considered. The lesson wasn't just in being defeated, but in being utterly, thoroughly understood by those he had dismissed. Months later, the Iron Will Martial Arts Club began to change. The transformation wasn't sudden or flashy, but a gradual, fundamental shift. Leo Vance, still energetic and passionate, was now remarkably humble. He no longer barked commands. Instead, he guided, explained, and most importantly, listened. He introduced new elements into the curriculum, not replacing his modern techniques, but enriching them. There were now dedicated foundation and philosophy sessions where students learned about proper breathing, centered movement, the history of martial arts, lessons inspired directly by Florence and her friends. Leo frequently invited Florence, Betty, and Carol to the dojo. They didn't teach formal classes, but they would share stories, demonstrate subtle principles, and offer gentle advice. They were revered figures, living examples of the enduring power of true martial arts. Lily, now blossoming with confidence, continued to train diligently at Iron Will, mastering both the modern and the traditional. She understood that while the old ways had given her balance and insight, the dojo offered the structured environment necessary for comprehensive growth. "My dears," Florence would often say, her voice calm and clear as she watched the blend of old and new. "Learning martial arts from the ground up, with proper guidance, is essential. We, the old ones, cannot give you that structured path. We can remind you of the principles, the quiet strengths that are easily forgotten. We can help you find your balance, both in movement and in life." As the sun set over Maplewood, casting long shadows across both the bustling dojo and the serene garden, Florence Miller sat with Leo, now her respectful colleague, sharing a quiet cup of tea. She watched her students, young and old, train together. A symphony of diverse movements. "Martial arts," she mused, her voice soft but profound, "is not about who is strongest or fastest. It's about discipline of the spirit, unwavering patience, and the ability to truly control oneself. It teaches us to respect our opponents, to honor the journey, and to cherish the timeless wisdom that often hides behind a quiet demeanor. True purpose of this path is not to defeat others, but to build oneself, to understand one's own potential, and to find harmony in the world." Her words resonated, a final, powerful lesson echoing through the peaceful evening.